Chapter 8. Fred. Fred hit Jackson, Tennessee as the sun was going down. Traveling a few miles, he found a place to park in Cypress Grove Nature Park. The entrance ended in a cul-de-sac parking lot. There was only one car parked there, and judging by the level of the dust and grime on the exterior, it looked like it had been there a while. He got out, stretched, and answered the call of nature behind a tree. He walked around the area and spotted an octagon-shaped gazebo a few yards from the parking lot, and it appeared there was an unoccupied makeshift hobo camp set up under it. Fred wondered what had happened to the person or persons who set it up. He gathered a bunch of dead tree limbs, broke them up, and started a fire in the freestanding grill located by the gazebo. There was a coffee pot sitting in the camp. Fred rinsed it out and used it to prepare some coffee. The coffee was brackish and unsatisfying, but it would have to do. He spotted a rabbit scrounging for something to eat. Fred looked around and decided it was worth the risk. He drew his revolver, fired, and reloaded before tucking it back in his holster. He gutted and skinned the scrawny rabbit quickly and put the meat on the grill. Fred knew without any seasoning or proper preparation the meat was going to be very gamey tasting. He thought back to the delicious meals his wife used to make, and his stomach grumbled. The rabbit meat was about what he expected, but it would fill his stomach nonetheless. His thoughts were interrupted by a car approaching. They must have heard the gunshot, he thought. Fred knew he was taking a risk when he fired, but he was hungry and needed food wherever he could get it. He stood slowly and waited. The car was a silver Cadillac, which maybe was brand new when the shit hit the fan, but it had since been run through the mill and back. There were 3 people in it, a salt and pepper team of young men and a woman sitting in the back seat. She was either white or mixed race, and they were all grungy looking. The front passenger exited first. He had 3 teardrop tattoos under his right eye and a spiderweb tattooed on the side of his neck. Fred thought tattoos, especially on someone's face, were disgusting. "Hola, amigo," he said in mock joyfulness. Fred stood there and stared at him with the coffee cup in his left hand. The young man had his own handgun, which appeared to be a Smith & Wesson Sigma, stuck in his waistband. He walked toward the gazebo with a taunting smile. Fred knew there was going to be no joyful outcome in this encounter, but still, he was willing to give them a chance. "I said hola, amigo. Don't you fucking understand Spanish?" he asked with an arrogant note in his voice. The driver exited now, along with the woman in the back seat. They were armed as well. They eyed Fred and the truck before walking over. The 3 of them spread out into what they believed were tactical positions. "Hello," Fred said. "I've got coffee. If you all have a tough constitution, you might actually find it tasty. I've no extra cups, though." The driver looked back at the truck. "That truck is the tits. You got some bulletproof glass mounted up there, homie?" "That's sweet," the driver said. The woman laughed. "Is it yours?" he asked. "Yes, it is," Fred replied. He knew what was coming. They were going to play a little game in which they thought they were going to be very clever with asinine word games they gleaned from watching B-rated gangster movies. Fred continued. "Unless someone is lucky enough to kill me for it. Which one of you is going to try first?" "You have a problem with us, amigo?" the first one asked with a scowl on his ugly face. Fred did not bother responding. The 2 men looked at each other, and the driver winked at his buddy. They focused their attention back on Fred and squared off. The woman moved out of the way, grinning in glee at what she thought was going to happen to the poor dumb fuck wearing boots and a stupid-looking cowboy hat. "I asked you a question, amigo. I said, do you have a problem with us?" "You might say that. I can smell y'all from here. Although I wouldn't know firsthand, I'm guessing a dog's ass smells better than you 3. "I have a question for you, amigo," Fred said. "Yeah? What's that?" the passenger asked with a sneer. How much time do you idiots need to get your courage up and try to shoot me? My coffee is getting cold. The passenger, the white guy, snarled and reached for his Sigma. Fred drew, shot, and holstered his weapon in the blink of an eye. He looked at the second man and noticed for the first time this one had fake gold upper teeth. Fred gestured with his coffee cup. "Are those gold teeth?" he asked. The black amigo stared at him incredulously. "They look stupid," Fred commented and sipped some more coffee. Black amigo yelled and grabbed for his gun, also tucked in his waistband. Unfortunately for him, in his haste to pull his gun, he stuck his finger in the trigger guard and accidentally shot the head of his penis off. He fell to the ground, screaming in agony. Fred had drawn his revolver during all of this, but did not bother firing. Instead, Fred took another sip of coffee. The girl gasped in confusion. She ran over to her black amigo and saw blood soaking through the crotch of his pants. "You shot them, you son of a bitch!" she shouted, and grabbed the gun out of her friend's waistband. Fred shot her a quarter of an inch above the spot where he was instinctively aiming. He frowned at his inaccuracy and looked at his revolver before holstering it. Fred finished his coffee before grabbing the pot with his handkerchief and pouring the dregs over the fire. Gathering up the extra guns and searching their car, he found little of value. Other than an extra magazine for one of the handguns, there was nothing but stale candy, a burnt spoon, and a used hypodermic needle. Fred managed to eat about half of the rabbit, left the rest, and walked back to Black Amigo. "Your friends are dead, and it looks like you have a bad gunshot wound. If there are any zombies around, they will have heard the noise. When they get close, they'll smell the blood. They'll be here soon," Fred said. "Are you gonna help me?" the young man asked. Fred looked him over without emotion. "Would you help me?" Fred asked, walked back to his truck, and drove off. Fred didn't want to drive at night. He finally found a parking lot a few miles away and stopped. The area was quiet. He didn't even see any zombies roaming around. Satisfied, he stretched out in the sleeper, but sleep didn't come easily. He kept thinking about the 3 miscreants he encountered and wondered if it was going to be the same in every city he drove through. Chapter 9. Julie's Surprise. The girls and Curly met me in the driveway. Julie and Macy marveled at all of the stuff, but then gasped when they saw the bullet holes in the tailgate. Curly was so concerned he pissed on one of the tires. "I had a little encounter," I said. "I'm not sure where to start." I left them standing in the driveway, took my boots off, and went inside. I was feeling anxious, nervous. I washed up, poured a large glass of water, and gulped it down. I had a delayed reaction to the morning's events, I think. The 2 of them walked in a moment later and sat at the table with me. Julie frowned. "Are you okay?" she asked. I looked at the 2 of them. "I don't know." I recounted the story as I drummed my fingers on the kitchen table. Well, I told them most of it. I kind of omitted Andy's parting kiss. "Holy shit," Julie said. "Do you think you were set up? Were they part of the captain's group?" "I don't know. Andy seemed sincere, but I don't know." Macy got up and refilled my glass. "Thanks," I said quietly, took another gulp and looked over at them. "Has Fred checked in? He should have passed at least 2 checkpoints by now." "Oh," Macy said. "I almost forgot. I got him on the shortwave shortly after you left this morning. He said he had reached checkpoint Bravo, but he had to make some detours due to all of the abandoned vehicles clogging the roadways. I haven't heard from him since. I'll try him on the radio now if you want." I shook my head. Checkpoint Bravo is in Memphis. He's going a lot slower than I had estimated. If we haven't heard from him by dinner time, we'll try to raise him. I finished my water and accidentally burped. "Sorry," I mumbled. They smiled, but didn't pick on me this time. We unloaded the truck and put everything in the den. It was becoming quite crowded. "We're running out of room," I said. I thought about last night. During our lovemaking, Julie was quite loud. I had no doubt Macy could hear it. We needed more room. "After the baby is born, maybe we should relocate to the Riggins house," I said. Julie smiled warmly at the suggestion. "That's a great idea. We can remodel one of the bedrooms for the baby," Julie added. "It's going to take quite a lot of work, but I think it's doable," I replied with a nod. The girls organized our new items with great delight. I put on a pair of sneakers and went back outside to survey the damage to my Ford Ranger truck. My back window was completely gone. Nothing but remnants of tempered glass remained. The front window was cracked, and the front end had extensive damage where I had struck the woman. There was also dried blood and tissue in the broken grille. It made me sick all over again. I walked back inside and wondered if there was a bottle of whiskey in the house. Macy and Julie were having a good time inspecting all of the baby clothes and accessories. I sat on the couch and watched them enjoying themselves. "Are you going to see Andy again?" Macy asked. "Oh, hell no," I replied. I still did not tell them of Andy propositioning me or kissing me. I intended to, sort of, but I couldn't seem to get it out of my mouth. "You think she set it up?" Julie asked. I shrugged. "I'm not sure." "You should ask her," Julie said. "Meet with her again. Get there early and set up like you've done before. If you see other people in the area, you'll know if she's involved. I'll come too if you want." I shook my head a little too quickly. Julie frowned. "Why not?" "Remember, she told me about the other women in their group being used as sex slaves. Don't think they won't try to kidnap you two if they get a chance." Macy and Julie looked at each other. "Zach, there's something I need to tell you," Julie said. I looked at her and waited. "I'm late." I stared at her questioningly. She scoffed when she realized I didn't understand. "I think I'm pregnant, Zach." She waited expectantly for a reaction from me. "Oh boy," I responded. Her mouth dropped open. "Oh boy? That's the only thing you have to say?" I tried to say something else, but it only came out as an unintelligible stammer. Julie went pale, ran into our bedroom and slammed the door. I looked over at Macy. She shook her head in mock disgust, pointed at me, and then pointed toward the bedroom. I took the hint. I knocked quietly before entering. Julie was on the bed rubbing Curly's belly, and he was grunting contentedly. I sat down beside them and was rewarded with two different responses. Curly wagged his tail. Julie pointedly ignored me. "Please don't doubt my love for you. You just took me by surprise," I said. "You don't want me to be pregnant," she said accusingly. "No, it's not that. I'm worried, that's all." Julie scoffed and glared at me. "Worried? Is that all you have to say? I guess I'm wondering why you're not saying, 'Why, Julie, we're having a baby. That's so wonderful.'" I suddenly had a couple of itches here and there I could not resist the urge to scratch. "Julie, of course I'm happy. You caught me off guard. I'm still a little torn up by running over that woman, you know?" I held my hands out pleadingly. "I don't know what else to say. Zach, why would it bother you? You're a cold-blooded killer. You're not torn up by another notch on your holster or your gun or wherever the fuck you put your notches." She got up and went back into the den. I watched her backside go through the door and hurriedly followed. "What in the world made you say such a cruel thing?" I demanded angrily. She pointed outside. "Remember when we were sitting right outside eating watermelon? We were laughing and having a good old time, and you and Fred just stood there watching. Now Fred is Fred, but you used to be right there laughing with us. You don't laugh anymore, Zach. Julie was yelling and crying at the same time now. You're not happy here. Her voice drifted off. I tried to touch her, but she shrugged me off and walked into the kitchen. I tried desperately to think up a response, to say something, anything to make it better. I couldn't. I was too angry. I walked outside. Looking at my watch, I made a decision. I still had plenty of daylight left. I grabbed some gear out of the barn and loaded it up in the back of my little truck. Macy came outside. What are you doing, Zach? She asked. I'm going for a ride. Maybe find a replacement for my truck. I drove off while she was trying to say something. Chapter 10. Kuru. It all happened in the blink of an eye. Let me start from the beginning. After leaving my house in a huff, I rode around aimlessly. I eventually found myself driving through a nondescript blue-collar neighborhood off of Tusculum Road. When I pulled down a side street, I stopped thinking of everything else. I spotted my new love, a replacement truck for my little Ford Ranger. It was a four-door metallic green Ford F-150 SVT Raptor Edition, and it was beautiful. It was parked in the driveway of a tired-looking brick home and stood out like a gem. I parked in front of the house and checked it out. It had all the accessories, including four-wheel drive and a tow package. It was almost a shame that I was going to remove all of the exterior bling, strip it of brake lights and turn signals, dull the paint job, and put hardware cloth over the windows. I found the keys on a hook immediately inside the front door of the house. Pocketing the keys, I cleared the house. It smelled like all of the houses, with rotting corpses smelled, but I was used to it by now. Hell, I didn't even gag anymore. There were two of them lying on the den floor. When it was clear they were not zombies, I ceased inspecting them. I was beyond caring about their demise and concentrated more on a superficial search of the house. I found nothing of consequence except for a can of pickled herring. I put it in my knapsack, went back outside, and transferred the rest of my gear from my old truck into my new truck. After transferring the gas out of the Ranger, I stood there looking at it in silence for a few minutes. It was a present from my grandmother on my 15th birthday, and it was the last thing I had which reminded me of her. My mind wandered as I recalled some fond memories of my childhood. All of those memories existed because of the love my grandmother had for me. She was the one who developed my love of reading. At her encouragement, she listened with rapt attention as I read to her every night after supper. She was a good person. I was eternally indebted to her. I turned to go, and that's when it happened. My first instinctive reaction was to grab my gun, but whoever had knocked me to the ground had their hand tightly gripped on it and was trying desperately to wrest it from me. We were in a tug-of-war for several seconds. We were face to face as we wrestled, and he was breathing heavily. His breath reeked as if he had not brushed his teeth in several days. I got a good look at his face. He wasn't a zombie, but he was still filthy. I fought as I held on to my sidearm tightly. If he got it away from me, I was certain I would be shot. We struggled on the ground for what seemed like a long time, but in fact was probably only a minute or two. His heavy breathing told me he was getting winded. He was older and was probably stronger than I was at one time, but I was the stronger one now. I punched him repeatedly with my left as we struggled. I hit him so many times my fist was starting to ache. His head was as hard as a rock, but I kept it up. I could hear him gasping for air and grunting with the pain of my repeated blows. He was getting tired and his strength was beginning to wane. With a tremendous grunt, I ripped his hand free of my gun and pushed him off of me. He tumbled back and his legs went akimbo. I hurriedly got to my feet and pulled out the kimber. He was large-framed and burly-looking, like a construction worker by day and a bouncer in a seedy bar at night. I was about to give him a terminal case of lead poisoning, but hesitated when I saw a woman standing in the driveway next door holding a small kid. She stared at me with dead eyes. Her plaid shirt was dirty and torn. The kid was runty, dirty, and looked downright weird, as if maybe he had brain damage or something. It was obvious neither of them had seen a bar of soap in quite a while. She reminded me of the woman I had run over. "You broke my nose," I heard my assailant say. I looked down at him in contempt. He was sitting now and holding his bleeding nose. "Why did you attack me?" "You were trying to steal my truck," he snarled, and then blew a bloody snot wad out of his nostrils. "Why are you lying?" I asked plainly. "Are you calling me a liar, you fuck?" he demanded as he struggled to catch his breath. "Yes, I am. The people who own this particular truck are inside their house, dead as shit. If you call me another disparaging name, I'm gonna shoot you in the kneecaps. You won't be able to walk and sepsis will set in. You'll die a slow, lingering death. Choose your next words carefully. I'm not in a good mood today." He glared at me but said nothing. I looked over at the woman and child. They looked awful, dirty and malnourished. The kid looked no older than 3 or 4. He was having these weird intermittent muscle spasms and his eyes kept rolling back in his head. "Who are you people?" I asked. "He's my husband and this is our child," the woman said. The child suddenly burst out in laughter. Just as suddenly, he stopped and his face went blank, except for the spasms in his legs. It was extremely weird. I looked behind her. There, 6 pathetic but unfriendly-looking men emerged from the back of a house across the street. They were about 50 feet away and steadily making their way toward me. Then it suddenly hit me. I had read about the symptoms the little boy was displaying. "Kuru?" I gasped in disgust. The men continued closing the distance between us. They were armed with an assortment of machetes, bats, and knives. One of them had an old rusty shotgun. I didn't like it. The one with the shotgun started to raise it and take aim, which sealed his fate. He started to say something, probably a threatening demand for me to drop my weapon, but before he could utter a word, I shot him with the quickness instilled by the tutelage of Mr. Frederick McCoy. I knew at any second they were going to bum rush me before I could shoot more than 1 or 2. My survival instincts kicked in. "Stop where you are," I yelled. They froze and looked at each other. "He's just a fucking kid," one of them growled, and in a silent agreement they started to spread out. I quickly aimed center mass and shot another one. One of them started running toward me. I shot him and then for good measure put a bullet in the left knee of the one who originally attacked me. He howled in pain. The little kid burst out laughing again. This time they listened and stopped. I walked over and grabbed the shotgun. It was a 12-gauge double barrel, very lethal in the right hands. I started inching my way toward my newly acquired truck. "I'm right, aren't I? You people are cannibals." In spite of myself, I shuddered. I stared at the woman, waiting for a response. She hung her head. "Fucking disgusting is what it is," I whispered. I continued aiming my gun at them, put the shotgun in the cab, and got in. They stared at me with lifeless yet hungry expressions. They may as well have been zombies. "Well, boys," I said as I waved my gun at their dead friends, "it looks like you're gonna eat good tonight." They looked at their dead friends as if I'd just served up supper. "Bon appetit, you sick fucks," I snarled and squealed the tires as I backed out of the driveway. Unfortunately, I ran over a curb as I sped away. The curb proved to be my undoing. I had driven less than a mile when I heard the telltale sounds of thump, thump, thump. I had at least one flat tire. I stopped my new truck and got out. My front right tire was completely fucked. Even the rim was foobar. A quick check revealed no spare. A look around at my surroundings revealed I was fucked more than just a flat tire. Somehow, I had driven into a nest of zombies. Oh, they were rotten beyond belief. I had no idea how they were still on their feet. Nevertheless, they saw me, and they were moving in for the kill. There were dozens of them, and they were close. Too close. I grabbed a canteen, the AR-15, and all of the ammo I could stuff in my pockets. Then, I did what came naturally to me. I ran. I shot as I ran. There were far too many of them. I had to make every shot count. Headshots. Anything else was useless. I cleared a path and headed toward home. I mentally calculated the mileage while I attempted to stick to a steady pace. If I stuck to the roads, it was going to be a 15-mile trek. I ran for a mile before stopping, but only long enough to reload my magazine, then I started again. I was into my 4th or 5th mile when the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. By the time I reached 6 or 7, it was completely dark. I was scared. I felt like I was living out one of my nightmares. I forced myself to breathe deep and clear my head. I had put distance between the first group I encountered and thought I was in the clear, but then I caught a scent of the stinking bastards and surmised I'd apparently run into another group. They were close, and I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of my face. I literally ran smack into one. Fortunately for me, I kept my balance while it fell to the ground. I stomped on his head a couple of times before putting distance between it and me. I ran another mile before stopping for a few minutes and crouched in the ditch beside the road. Once I caught my breath, I tried hard to listen. I heard them moaning. No, moaning wasn't the proper word. Their voices were merely rasps now. I guessed the decomposition affected their vocal cords. It sounded like there were several of them down the road, right in the direction I needed to go. They sensed me somehow and became distinctively more agitated. The moon finally made an appearance. It was a partial moon, waxing crescent, I think it was called. It helped with my night vision a little. I could discern the faint outlines of structures, but not distinctly enough to tell the difference between a house and a business. Perhaps this was the reason why there were zombies so close. I worked my way in between buildings. If only I could see a street address, anything. I had a vague notion of where I was, but I continued working my way through the houses, but had to move slowly. The overgrown lawns and scattered debris made the going difficult. Any misstep caused unwanted noise. I hoped I was maneuvering around them. I bumped up against objects more than once. After several excruciating minutes, I made my way back onto a road. I found the North Star, got my bearings, and started running in the direction I hoped would lead me home. Julie sat at the kitchen table when she heard Zach's truck start. She sat a moment longer, silently cursing him. Then she got up and ran outside, only to see the little Ford Ranger crossing the bridge and driving out of sight. Macy stood on the porch quietly. "Did he say anything?" she asked Macy. "He mentioned going to look for a new truck." She looked at Julie. "He's just scared, Julie. Men are like that." Julie sighed heavily. "I am too. I guess I should have understood." They sat in the rocking chairs until nightfall. Then both of them became worried. "Should we go looking for him?" Macy asked. Julie shook her head. "Where would we start? Why don't we try the radio?" They went inside and tried several times, but there was no response. They sat looking at the radio, wondering what to do next, when suddenly, Macy gasped and doubled over. "What's wrong?" Julie asked. "I'm having contractions," Macy responded. "I think I've been having them for about an hour now, to be honest. I didn't want to say anything, though. You had other things on your mind." Oh shit, Julie said. Okay. Let's get you into bed and I'm gonna look you over." Julie helped Macy to her bedroom and got her undressed. "Okay, I'm going to look at you and see if you're dilating or anything," Julie said. Macy nodded tentatively and then grunted. Uh-oh. "Uh-oh, what?" Julie asked, and then she looked down. "Did your water just break?" she asked. Macy looked at Julie and nodded. Julie saw fear in her eyes. "You're going to give birth, aren't you, Macy?" Macy nodded again. "Okay, we've planned for this, right? We'll get through this, girlfriend. Don't be afraid." Julie tried to sound confident, but the two of them heard the tremor in her voice. It was hard trying to keep track of my headings. I had to leave the road and make detours constantly. I'd take side roads or run through backyards and then try to get back on the main roadway again, all in total darkness. Let's not forget the godforsaken zombies. Every time I made a turn, there would be one or two lumbering toward me. I lost count of my shots and had no idea how much ammunition I had left. On top of it all, I had not done any cross-country running in several months. The lack of training was immediately evident. My throat and lungs burned, but to stop and rest for more than a few seconds meant an almost certain death. I slowed to a walk only long enough to check my watch. It was a little after 2100 hours, 9 p.m. I resumed jogging and approached an intersection. When I got close enough, I could see the street sign. The name of the street was familiar. I knew where I was now and only a little off track. A quick mental calculation told me I had another 5 miles to go, more or less. I was winded and my feet were beginning to ache. I worked on controlling my breathing and kept telling myself I was going to make it. Macy's breathing was labored and she was sweating profusely. Julie wasn't keeping track of time. She only knew the baby was coming and Zach was nowhere around. "It's getting close now, I think. I need you to keep doing your Lamaze breathing." Julie tried to sound more confident than she felt. She continued talking reassuringly to Macy and occasionally wiped her face with a damp washcloth. "What time is it?" Macy asked. Julie looked at her wristwatch. "It's a little after 10. It won't be long now until you start crowning. I'll let you know when." "I'm scared, Julie. Something doesn't feel right," Macy said. "Come on now. You have no idea what it's supposed to feel like." Julie wiped Macy's brow again and then took her blood pressure. It seemed really high, she thought. She inspected again. "Oh my God, Macy, you're crowning. It won't be long now. Start pushing." Chapter 11. A Newborn. It was close to midnight when I crossed the bridge to my home. I was exhausted, drenched in sweat, and my entire body hurt. My feet were sore and the inside of my thighs were chafed so bad I was having trouble walking normally. I made my way cautiously to the house. The generator was still going, which was odd. I walked around the house but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I gave the special knock before entering. "It's me," I said as I opened the door. I'd learned my lesson. I had full intention of begging Julie for forgiveness. I was willing to do anything to get back the life I had a few hours ago, back when Julie smiled at me every time she caught me looking at her. I called out again and heard something in Macy's bedroom. I walked in slowly. Julie looked up at me. There was sweat on her brow and she was holding something swaddled in a small blanket. "It's a baby boy. Macy's in trouble. She's hemorrhaging," she said quietly. I looked all three of them over. They looked awful. Macy was ashen-faced and unconscious. "How's the baby?" I asked. Julie looked at me solemnly. "He's weak. I'm guessing he was born prematurely, but I'm not sure. He's so small. Please do something, Zach," she begged. I nodded. "Okay, I'll take care of Macy. You get the kid in the crib. No, wait, you better keep him with you and watch him. He'll need to eat soon, I'm guessing. We'll need to feed him formula until Macy is strong enough to breastfeed him." Julie nodded. I lifted the blanket. Macy was pale, listless, and still soiled from the birth. Julie walked in and stood beside me. "Where is her placenta?" I asked. "It never came out. She urinated and there was a lot of blood, but no placenta. You need to do a fundal massage," she said and explained. "Take your hand and place it where her uterus is. Gently massage and push down. You'll probably need to do it for 30 minutes or so." I did as Julie instructed while Julie watched. After several minutes, the placenta appeared. I pulled it out gently. Other tissue came out, along with a lot of blood. Julie handed me the baby and then quickly ran to the restroom. I heard her hurling chunks in the toilet. Wonderful, I thought. I placed the child in the crib, got a wash pan, filled it with warm water, and used a wash rag to clean her up. Macy awakened when she felt the warmth of the washcloth. I gave her a reassuring smile. "Hi, Macy. Don't mind me. I'm just getting you cleaned up, okay?" She nodded sleepily and nodded off. After I finished, I carried Macy to our bedroom and called Julie out of the bathroom. "I need a maxi pad," I said plainly. Julie looked at me perplexed. "For Macy, not me." Julie nodded in sudden understanding, disappeared into the bathroom and came back out with one, along with a fresh pair of panties. She brushed me aside and I watched as she put the panties on Macy and positioned the pad. "I'm going to keep an eye on the baby," Julie said. "Okay, I'm gonna clean up the mess and put some broth on the stove." I gathered up the bedding, shoved them into a trash bag, and temporarily put it in the cellar. I couldn't simply throw them outside. The afterbirth would attract unwanted visitors. After a few minutes in the kitchen, I came back to the bedroom and gently woke her. "Macy, I need to get some fluids in you. I've made some broth and I need you to take some sips. Can you do that?" I asked. Macy nodded slightly. "If you feel like you're gonna vomit, let me know and don't hold it back." She nodded again. I fed her slowly, a spoon at a time, and managed to get about a cup's worth in her before she passed out. I spent the rest of the night dripping water into her mouth. I did not know if she was going to live, and was surprised at how worried I was. Sometime during the night or morning, I drifted off. Awakening with a start, I looked at my watch. It was a little after 5 a.m. I found Julie in the den. She was maintaining her bedside vigil with the baby. She looked up at me with worry on her face. "How is she?" she asked. "Sleeping. I got some fluids in her, which is good, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough." I motioned at the baby. "Did he eat?" I asked. "A little," she said. I looked closely at the child. He was so small, vulnerable. He had Jason's features. I didn't know whether to be relieved or saddened. If he lived, would I have to tell him one day how his father died? "Why don't you get some sleep? I'll watch over them." She smiled at me tiredly. "You look like you need sleep more than me," she sniffed. "You need a bath, too." "What did you get yourself into?" she asked. I explained briefly. Her eyes widened. "Wait a minute. You ran all the way home from Tusculum Road?" I nodded. In the dark, with zombies around. I nodded again. Her eyes grew wider. Holy shit, Zach, she said. I expected her to jump all in my ass for such a stupid act, but instead, she stood, and in spite of how badly I reeked, she hugged me tightly. I'm glad you're okay, but please don't do that again. I was worried sick, she said. I agreed profusely. Listen, I have something to say. I'm very sorry about earlier. You took me by surprise. I was scared and stressed, I said sincerely. She looked up at me and I kissed her on the forehead. I want you to know I am so very happy you are carrying my baby. We're gonna make it work because I love you with all of my heart. I kissed her again. She leaned up and kissed me back. I love you too, Zach, with all of my heart, Julie said. Then her expression changed. There's something I have to tell you. I looked at her and she looked at the floor. During all of this, I started my period. I'm not pregnant, she said, and looked up at me with a hint of tears in her eyes. I guess it was wishful dreaming, she quipped. It's okay, I replied and hugged her. I really want a baby with you. I guess we'll have to keep trying. I kissed her deeply and hugged her again. I hope you take a bath before we try again, she said with a smile. We took turns for the next few days caring for the two of them. Macy's health steadily improved, and on day 2 she was able to eat a whole bowl of soup. She was too weak to stand for more than a few seconds, so I would carry her to the bathroom and help her bathe. You've been good to me, Zach, she said while I helped dry her off one evening. Just so you know, when you get your strength back, you'll be getting no more sponge baths from me. She looked at me and smiled. I smiled back. Her eyes widened slightly. You smiled at me. Yeah, I guess I did. I finished drying her, wrapped her in a towel, and carried her back to her bed. I guess I can't keep a chip on my shoulder the rest of my life, now can I said as I pulled the blankets over her and fluffed her pillows. How about I brush your hair out before you go to sleep? She nodded and smiled at me again. I helped her sit up, and as I reached for the brush on the nightstand, she suddenly leaned forward and kissed me on the cheek. I smiled to hide my embarrassment. I quickly brushed her hair and fluffed her pillows again. She grabbed one of my hands. When we were dating, you were a naive boy. You've changed, Zach. You're a grown man now. I looked at her and shrugged. Julie interrupted anything either of us might have said when she brought in the baby. She had him swaddled in a small blanket. Macy took him in her arms. You have a beautiful baby boy, Julie said. Macy looked up and tried to smile, but she couldn't seem to do it. Chapter 12. A Death. What did you call it again? Howard asked. Kuru. It's a disease resulting from cannibalism, I said. Apparently, the only way to properly eat human flesh is for it to be cooked well done and avoid eating the brain. Howard eyed me. How in the hell did you know what it was? In 9th grade, I did a report for my geography class. Each student was assigned a country in Africa. My country was South Sudan. There's a river in Sudan named the Kuru. I was going to add a few factoids in my paper about the river systems and was doing a Wikipedia search. There were a few hits on the word Kuru. One of them was about cannibalism in New Guinea. It fascinated me so much, I looked up videos of it on YouTube. Howard shuddered. They had videos? I nodded. Howard shuddered again. Eating people. That's just plain wrong, Zach. Just plain wrong. I nodded silently. You sure it's a Ford F-150? Howard asked. Yeah, it's a nice one, I said. He already knew this. We discussed it before we left his shop and found a spare tire to fit it, which was sitting in the back of his Hummer. Howard was sort of the opposite of Fred. Where Fred was stoic, Howard was a talker. "Zach?" Howard asked. I looked over at him. "If you were starving, maybe had a wife and some kids who were starving, and they were looking at you, wondering what you were going to do about it, would you do it?" "Would I do what?" I glanced over at him. "Eat another human?" Howard nodded and eyed me. I don't know, Howard. I know I'd have to be very desperate before I even thought of it as a viable alternative. I guess if I had starving kids and there was no other food source? I shrugged. "I don't know," I repeated. "The only thing I'm certain of right now is if I see any of those people again, I'm not going to be very civil with them." We rode in silence for a couple of minutes. "I've never been a fighter," Howard suddenly said. "I had 2 older brothers. Both of them were in a gang. My oldest brother was killed in a drive-by. There was no rhyme or reason behind the murder. He happened to be in a rival gang is all. My other brother, he swore revenge. He found 3 of them in an apartment one night and killed them all. The police arrested him, of course. He got tried as an adult and the jury found him guilty. The judge gave him back-to-back life sentences. He was the same age as you at the time." Howard shook his head sadly before continuing. "I was 13 when it happened. My mama was devastated. I don't think she ever recovered. I was pretty devastated too." "What did you do?" I asked. "I had an uncle who owned a garage. Started working for him after school and on weekends to help Mama pay the bills. It kept me out of trouble and away from the gangs. That's how I became a mechanic." I nodded thoughtfully and pointed down the road. "There it is." The truck appeared unmoved since I had left it. "Okay, you're the better shot. I'm the better mechanic. I'll get the tire changed and you keep watch," Howard said. He parked behind the truck and we got out. I made a quick scan of the area and looked in the truck. It was empty. "They took everything, the bastards," I said. Howard grunted and crawled under the truck. "The gas tank's still intact. No holes, but I'm betting they drained it as well. Good thing we brought a gas can." I used Howard's binoculars to scan the area as he got the tire replaced and put 5 gallons of gas in the truck. I fished the keys out of my pocket and it started right up. "Good thing you took the keys with you. They'd have taken this truck with them, even with a flat tire." Howard popped the hood and inspected the motor. "Everything looks good, Zach. It's got 4-wheel drive, a tow package, and a V8 engine. It'll be able to tow up to 6,000 pounds. It even has one of those new lithium batteries. That's awesome," he said as he closed the hood, looked around, and studied me. "What are we, about 15 miles from your farm? You say you ran all the way back? In the dark?" he asked. I nodded. "Holy sheep shit, Zach," Howard said incredulously. I shrugged. It was either run or meander along, waiting to be attacked and eaten. Howard laughed. "I get your point." I frowned then. Howard saw it. "What?" "It was the weirdest thing, Howard. For a few of those miles, I felt like I was being followed." "Well, of course, it was the zombies," Howard replied. I shook my head. "No, it was something or somebody else. The zombies stank and they made these awful breathing noises. They sounded like someone using a rasp on a piece of old oak. They were fairly easy to avoid. It was something else. I don't know, but when I was running, I felt like someone was trailing me. I made several detours and cutbacks, but I never saw anyone or anything." I shrugged. Maybe it was a coyote thinking I would be an easy meal. Howard nodded, although I don't think he comprehended what I was saying. "All right, Zach, where to now?" he asked. "I'm going to get my property back," I said. Howard's eyes widened. "You're gonna confront those cannibal-eating motherfuckers?" he asked. I nodded. "You can wait here if you want." "Oh, hell no. I'm not sitting here by myself." Howard rubbed his face. "I'll follow you." He walked to his Hummer. I drove up to the neighborhood and parked near my old truck. The driver's door was open, as if they were looking for something to loot out of it as well. The bodies were missing. Only some dried blood trails remained. I followed the trails through the yard and to a house one street over. I went back inside the truck owner's home and scrounged around until I found a couple of mason jars. I punctured a hole in the gas tank of my Ranger and managed to fill up 2 of the jars. Rigging them so they were Molotov cocktails, Howard and I drove over to the next street and parked about 20 feet away from their house. I saw curtains being pulled aside. They knew we were here. I exited with my assault rifle, shot out the windows before lighting one of the rags on the jar, and threw it through the broken window. "You fuckers have 5 minutes to bring my property back to me," I shouted. "Watch him, Howard." He took up a position beside his Hummer with his shotgun. I prepared the second jar. 4 minutes, I yelled, and threw it through the other shattered window. "Zach," Howard whispered, "it's only been about 20 seconds. I looked at him and winked. There was smoke coming out of the window now. I shot a few more times and reloaded. 3 minutes, I yelled, and glanced back at Howard. He looked at me and then shot out one of the upstairs windows. 2 minutes, he yelled. I nodded. "I'm going to run around to the back of the house. Stay here," I said as I took off running. The back door was opening a crack as I rounded the corner. I splintered the door frame with a bullet. "Do you fucktards think we're playing? You better bring my property back ASAP. The door slammed shut and I jogged back around front. The front door of the burning house opened a moment later. "Don't shoot," a woman shouted. "We're coming out." They nervously exited the house with their hands raised. It was the same crew, even the kid. Hell, they were even wearing the same clothes. "Where is my property?" I asked. "It's all inside," one of the men said. "Well, go get it, you dumbass," I demanded. He tentatively looked inside. "The place is on fire. It's full of smoke." "Well, then you better make it fast. You men go in there and help your friend, otherwise I'm taking out your kneecaps." They were certainly slow-witted, but a shot at their feet reaffirmed to them I was serious. They turned and ran back inside. They came out a minute later with their arms loaded and coughing heavily. "Put it all in the back of my truck," I said. "Make it fast." They hurriedly complied. As the last one dropped my property into the bed of the truck, he looked back at the house. Flames were visible now. "You've set our house on fire. What do we do now?" he lamented. Frankly, I don't give a shit. I motioned at Howard and we left. "You want to drive over to the Cool Springs Mall and try some of the retail businesses around there? See if there's anything left over we can use?" Howard asked. "I need to get some baby stuff and maybe some stuff for the girls, but I need to make it quick and get back to the farm," I said. We were sitting in front of his home, a former tire store near the intersection of Nolansville and Old Hickory. I hooked my thumb over my shoulder at a nearby Walmart. "Have you been in there lately?" I asked. Howard shook his head. "Not lately. I tried back in the spring. Man, it was full of zombies." He shook his head again. "But I haven't tried it lately. You want to give it a shot?" I shrugged. "We can give it a try. If there are too many of them still in there, we'll back out and call it a day." Howard frowned with worry, but went along. We started at the front doors and slowly worked our way in. We spent the next 2 hours clearing the superstore. Every time we thought we had killed them all, another one would emerge out of a dark corner. The two of us were drenched in sweat by the time we killed the last one. "My ears are ringing. I should have worn earplugs," Howard lamented. I nodded. "Yeah, mine too." I made a mental calculation. "I'm counting 18 dead Zeds. Does that sound about right?" I asked. Howard nodded in agreement. I pointed toward the front of the store. There were multiple corpses of what I suppose were healthy people before they died. There wasn't much left of them. Whatever the zombies didn't chew on, the maggots had finished the job. It looks like people came in here thinking they had easy pickings and would get attacked. Even so, the store doesn't have much left, I said. Howard nodded again and took a long drink from his canteen. "We need to apply rule number 8 and burn these corpses," I said as an afterthought. Howard got up and walked down an aisle. He returned a minute later with 2 pair of cheap gardening gloves. I smiled appreciatively. "It's like you predicted, though. Those zombies are dying off. These ones here," Howard waved his finger at the zombies we'd killed, "they could hardly move." I agreed. It was a good sign. Once they all died off, it would make it a lot easier for the survivors. We had no problem dragging them outside. The decomposition reduced their body weight by a considerable amount. Stacking some debris on top of the corpses, we watched them burn. When the fire was going sufficiently, we walked back in and then spent several minutes looking around at the small amount of merchandise left. "It looks like all the food products are gone, but there's still some baby and women's products left," Howard said. "I better get LaShonda some of those female things as well. She'll have my ass if I don't bring her a present." He smiled and wiped the sweat off of his brow before continuing. "You know, it wasn't so long ago if you brought a woman a box of tampons as a present, you'd get your face slapped." He erupted with his signature belly laugh at his own joke. I had to laugh as well. It was a great stress reliever. We got some shopping carts and with the aid of flashlights soon had them overflowing. "Have you noticed they can't scream or shriek anymore?" I asked Howard. "Yeah, they sure sound funny," he said. "Do you want to come over and visit a while?" he asked. I looked at my watch. "We better call it for the day. I have a lot of farm chores waiting." "How are Macy and her baby?" "Macy's still very weak, but I think she's going to be all right. The baby is another story. He's so tiny. I'm worried about him. Macy's been trying to feed him, but he's lethargic. I may know a lot, but I don't know much about babies. Do you think LaShonda could come over one day and see what she thinks?" I asked. Howard nodded. "Why didn't you say so sooner? Consider it done." He glanced at the sun. "We still have plenty of daylight. I'll go pick her and the boys up and we'll be right over." I shook his hand and we parted company. The 4 of them came to the house an hour later. I was sitting on the porch when they drove up. Lil H and Derry ran up, said hi, and started playing with Curly. Howard laughed as he walked up. "You sure got those chores done quick." I shook my head as I stood and spoke somberly. "The chores had to wait, Howard." I looked at his wife. "Hi, LaShonda. It's good to see you." "The girls are inside." She looked at me and frowned. "What's wrong, Zach?" she asked. "It's the baby. You better go inside. We'll wait out here." LaShonda rushed inside. I looked over at Howard and his sons. "The baby died." "Oh, shit," Howard said. We sat on the porch for a while and listened to the women cry inside. I stood suddenly. "There's some wood in the barn. Howard, would you mind helping me build a coffin?" I asked. Howard stood. "Absolutely." Howard, his sons, and I walked slowly to the barn. I tried to make some measurements on the wood, but was all thumbs. Howard told me to have a seat and relax. He took over and had a small coffin built in no time. It looked very nice. We buried the baby on the mound beside Rick. Even though they had never met, he always seemed to like children. Everyone was somber and spoke in hushed tones. Howard recited the Lord's Prayer and I shoveled the dirt. The boys helped me quietly. Afterward, I gently picked Macy up and put her back on the ATV. She wept silently on the ride back. Julie kept a reassuring arm around her. "How about I put you to bed and fix you some tea?" I asked. She nodded absently. She was able to walk for short distances now, but the stress of her baby's death had sapped her strength. I carried her inside and tucked her in while Julie fluffed her pillows. "I don't know what I'd do without you two," Macy said softly. "We're all family now, Macy," Julie said. "We stick together, right?" Macy looked up at Julie and nodded sadly. She fell asleep within minutes. The rest of us gathered on the porch and talked quietly. When the sun was on the horizon, the Allen family said their goodbyes. Julie and I ate a small dinner and went to bed. At Julie's insistence, we slept with Macy. Julie said she didn't want her to be alone. I was the sandwich. I had one on each side of me. Julie settled in with her butt snuggled up against me, and Macy had her head buried in the crook of my shoulder. I drifted off, wondering if this was all going to work out okay. Chapter 13. Fred. Fred attempted to save time by traveling on the interstate. He encountered chronic traffic jams and at one point had to drive in reverse for over a mile before he could back down an entrance ramp. He finally made it to the outskirts of Memphis when the sun was in his eyes. He spent the night in the sleeper of his truck on the side of Interstate 40 at the base of the bridge over the Mississippi River, known as the Hernando de Soto Bridge. It consisted of 6 lanes with a concrete barrier down the middle. Daylight confirmed what he suspected last night. The entire bridge, all 6 lanes, was a logjam. He realized with great frustration there was no possible way he was going to maneuver the Volvo rig through the gridlock of abandoned and wrecked motor vehicles. Seeing no other alternative, Fred loaded a backpack, retrieved his favorite rifle, a Winchester lever action, his revolvers, and set out on foot. There were a few zombies on foot, but most of them were stuck in the vehicles. Fred adeptly avoided them. Most of them. It was a long walk across the bridge. Every time he passed a car or a truck, there was a zombie waiting, lunging, gnashing. He shot sparingly, running past them when he could, shooting only when there was no other choice. It was roughly 10,000 feet, almost 2 miles, before he reached the rest area on the west side of the river. To his delight, he found an old Volkswagen Bug. It was bright yellow, dirty, but otherwise appeared to be in good condition, if you didn't count the rotting corpse sitting behind the wheel. Seeing no other option, Fred broke out the little vent window, unlocked the door, and dragged the corpse out. The keys were still in the ignition and the battery was dead, which was no surprise. That was the beauty of the venerable Bug. They seemed to be almost indestructible. Fred dumped his backpack in the back seat, put it in neutral, and began pushing. After several attempts and pushing the little car for almost 100 yards, it sputtered to life. Fred hopped in and drove on. Chapter 14. Getting to know Andy. It had been 2 weeks to the day since my meeting with Andy. I had not planned on seeing her again, but I felt the extenuating circumstances warranted another encounter. I knew it was risky. If she were a part of those idiots who tried to ambush me, I would be taking a big chance by coming to this location again. Nevertheless, I wanted more information from her. Specifically, I needed to know if they had encountered any doctors. The death of Macy's child troubled me greatly. One day, Julie and I were going to have a child. I started out well before sunrise. It was cool this morning. The outdoor thermometer read 54 degrees. September was here, and a change in the weather was close at hand. I packed the truck with a picnic basket and grill. A nice brunch might put Andy in a good mood if she even bothered showing up. I also hid a gun under the seat and added one to an ankle holster in case she was in a nasty mood or brought friends. I used the night vision gear to drive, but it was slow going. The recent gunshot to my head, although merely a glancing wound, had nevertheless caused me some issues. One of them being, if I wore those things for any length of time, I'd get a severe headache. I got about 5 miles before I took them off and used the headlights. Again, another risky move, but I wanted my mind sharp for the meeting. The problem was the headlights tended to attract zombies. There were no massive hordes, but there were more than I was comfortable with. I stopped every so often and would wait for them to approach before saying hello with a headshot. They were starting to all look alike. The decomposition eliminated any identifiable character traits. I assumed what gender they were based on their manner of dress. I killed an even dozen before arriving at the old store. Killing the lights as I parked on the side of the store, I approached the entrance. Using the night vision gear, I did a quick sweep of the interior. No live people, no zombies. I went back outside and scanned the area. There was an old white wooden building behind the store. It was empty of anything worthwhile. There was no need for the night vision apparatus now, since dawn was fast approaching. I sat on the front steps and waited. She drove into the parking lot shortly after sunup, made eye contact with me and smiled. When she got out of her Jeep, she looked skinnier than the last time we met, but at least her hair had grown out a little more. It helped make her look more feminine. She ran up and hugged me tightly. "When you didn't show up last week, I was kind of let down," she said. I shrugged apologetically. I had all kinds of crap to do around the farm, and I don't have any help. "Your girlfriend doesn't help you?" I shrugged again. I was not going to tell her Julie was busy tending to Macy and monitoring the radio in case Fred called. She scoffed. "Well, that's bullshit if you ask me. I'd help you." "I've no doubt you would. Are you hungry?" I asked. "I brought some food. We can have a picnic breakfast." She eyed me coyly. "You wanna fuck before or after?" I chuckled. "You know I can't." She grinned back at me and responded with a carefree shrug. "Your loss. I guess we'll eat then." She helped me get the grill set up, and we laid a blanket out on the asphalt. We had the steaks grilled in no time. I brought a small skillet and fried some eggs as well. After we finished eating, Andy laid back, pulled her shirt up, and rubbed her belly. "I'm stuffed," she exclaimed. "How are you guys doing for food?" I asked as I eyed her skinny torso. She scoffed again. "The captain eats really well, but the rest of us not so much. Some of our group had canned a lot of stuff prior to this shit going down, but they fucked it up somehow. Most of it was contaminated. We have some gardens we harvested, but not enough. We've been hitting abandoned houses like crazy. It's hit or miss." "What about cattle?" I asked. "Yeah, we have some. We used to have a lot, but coyotes killed some, and a bunch of them developed some kind of disease." "You don't have any donkeys?" I asked. She looked at me questioningly. "A donkey will kill a coyote. We used to have one at the farm. It died, and Rick never replaced him. After coyotes killed our chickens, I found a couple of them one day and transported them to our farm. We haven't had any problems since." "Oh, well, we don't have any donkeys," she continued. "The captain is worried. He doesn't say it, but he's worried. I've known him my whole life, I can tell. Anyway, rations have been cut. He sends foraging crews out every day." "What area are they concentrating on?" Andy looked over at me. They've been working in and around the Eagleville area, but it doesn't mean the captain has forgotten about you. He thinks you guys are well off. By the way, he's been talking about meeting with you again." "Did he say what for?" I asked. "Yeah, he wants to have a poetry reading with you." I arched an eyebrow. She kept a serious expression for about 3 seconds, and then she started giggling. I smiled. "Okay, you got me." "I think he wants to pick your brain about food and stuff," she said. I nodded and changed the subject. "Have you guys been in contact with any doctors, nurses, veterinarians, anyone like that?" I asked. She scoffed. "We ran into a doctor and his wife not too long ago. They thought they were the shit for some reason. The doctor's wife demanded the captain pay for her husband's services." Her features darkened. "What happened?" I asked. "The captain took a hammer to her. He broke a couple of her fingers. He thought it would make the doctor fall in line, so we left them at their house. When a crew went back the next day, they were gone." She looked at me. "The captain was so pissed that he beat a few of us. We went back to their house and he set fire to it." "Nice guy," I quipped, and then remembered setting fire to the cannibal's home. I found myself uncomfortable with the corollary. "You have no idea," she said quietly. She pointed at the sky. "When I was a kid, I'd do this. Lay in my backyard, stare at the clouds, and imagine what the shapes were. Look, there's a horse." I laid back and looked at the cloud she was pointing at. It looked more like a fat cow to me, with oversized bunny ears. I suppose every kid has done this. "Yeah." She sat up suddenly. "But we're not kids anymore, are we?" I sat up as well. "Not anymore." Andy sighed and looked over at me. "You want to ask more questions?" "Yep." "Where's the compound?" I asked. She pointed. "Go that way for a few miles. There's a road called Rocky Glade. There's a dead-end road that runs off of it called Ward Road. The land has been in the family since the Civil War." She turned back at me and grinned. "Are you going to pay us visit?" I grinned. "More like I want to know where the captain lives so I can stay away." She scoffed. "Oh, I understand all too well. So, I have a question for you." Andy turned and eyed me. "Since you won't fuck me, how about a blowjob?" I chuckled. "I can't," I said. "My girlfriend would be very unhappy with me." Andy rubbed her belly some more. "She'll never know." I shook my head. "I'm a terrible liar. She'd know. Also, I'm in love with her, so I'd feel like shit if I knowingly did anything to hurt her." "You don't have anyone else?" She shook her head. "Nobody would dare touch me. So enough about me being my uncle's little whore. Tell me about your girlfriend." Well, she's a little taller than you, and weighs maybe 10 or 20 pounds more. She has dark brown chestnut hair growing past her shoulders." I thought of her hair and how much I loved brushing it after she washed it. "She has pretty blue eyes and some freckles on her cheeks that really turn me on. Not to mention her lithe body," I thought. "All of that is wrapped around a pert and beautiful girl with a feisty disposition. We met after everything happened and fell in love." "How old is she?" Andy asked. "Same as me, 16. I'm turning 17 in November." "I turned 16 in January," she said. "I know what you're about to ask. Besides the baby, I'm the youngest one of our group. There was one boy my age, but he disappeared." "There's a baby?" I asked. She nodded. "Were there any problems during childbirth?" Andy shook her head. "Nope, it just popped right out. It's a little boy," she scoffed. "God only knows who the dad is." I thought about the baby and wondered how he was doing, if he was going to survive. It also made me think of Macy's baby. Okay, one last question. The last time we met, did you set me up to be ambushed? Her mouth dropped open. What? No? You were ambushed? I nodded and related the story. Zach, I didn't have anything to do with that, I swear. You say 2 people were killed and one of them was a woman? I nodded. We haven't lost anyone since the last time we spoke. Why would you think I'd do something like that? I shrugged. You seem pretty cool, Andy, and I like you, but I hardly know you. And as Julie has said more than once, I know nothing about women. She glared at me. She's right. Andy insisted I kiss her before leaving. This time, it was not a surprise ambush kiss. I knew what I was doing. She grabbed my butt and pulled me against her when we did it. I instantly became aroused and felt guilty as hell about it as I drove away. She also gave me a present, a picture of her. It was a wallet-sized photo. It looked like a school yearbook picture. I stuck it under the visor. What the hell are you doing? I asked myself out loud. Julie was the love of my life, and here I was, kissing another girl. I could rationalize my actions. There was no tongue involved, but still. Plus, I had to admit to myself that I was rather enjoying the sponge baths I was giving Macy. You are a stupid idiot, Zachariah Gunderson, I said, and ended my conversation with myself. I put a CD in the stereo and made a point of traveling a different route as I returned home. Chapter 15. Rocky Fork. We've not heard anything from Fred? I asked. Both Macy and Julie shook their heads. It's been 3 weeks now, Macy said. She was putting on weight again and no longer had the pallor of Casper the Ghost. Still, Julie and I were concerned about her. Since the baby's death, she had not mentioned him once and cried frequently. We were sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee. I drummed my fingers absently and finally looked over at Julie. You want to go for a ride? I asked. Sure. Where are we going? She said. Andy mentioned a man with 2 kids living on Rocky Fork Road. I'm betting he doesn't like the captain. I say we introduce ourselves and see if he'd be a good ally. Macy held up her hand. I want to go. I haven't been off of the farm in weeks. I'm going stir-crazy. I looked over at Julie. She nodded in agreement. Are you strong enough? I asked. Macy nodded readily. Okay, let's get ready and load up. I had Julie drive while I kept watch. Macy was in the back seat. I had her armed with my Ruger 22. When we reached Rocky Fork Road, we drove slowly, looking for any telltale signs of life. Macy suddenly pointed. Look, are those goats? She asked. Julie stopped the truck and I looked them over with binoculars. I think someone lives there. The goats are chained to a post stuck in the ground. Let's pull in. You 2 stay in the truck and I'll try to make contact. We stopped at the head of the driveway and I got out. We had our standard plan going. If I was being threatened, Julie and Macy would take action. I walked up to within 10 feet of the house. Hello, I shouted, and then waited. As I stood there waiting, a scrawny little kid wearing nothing more than underwear ran out from the side of the house. He looked like he was no more than 5 or 6. I waved. His eyes widened and he ran back the way he came, giving me a good view of a fresh skid mark. A short time went by before a man appeared from the rear of the house. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, average height, brown hair which may have been cut by an expensive stylist once, and a youthful face sporting a month of whiskers. If I were to guess, I'd say he was a yuppie with expensive suits in his closet along with an assortment of leather shoes. He was also armed with a blue steel revolver. I immediately held my palms out, but was careful not to raise them over my head. I heard a truck door open behind me and knew one of them was about to shoot. "Easy now," I said. "We're friendly." "Who are you and what do you want?" he asked warily. "I'm Zach Gunderson." I motioned toward the truck with my head. "They're my friends. We spotted your house and thought we'd say hello. There aren't very many of us left these days, so we wanted to make contact. Oh, and we're not with the captain's group." His wariness changed to a quizzical expression. "Are you the guy who has been painting those rules everywhere?" he asked. "Yep, the one and the same," I replied with a friendly smile. He looked at me a minute in silence and then stared at the girls. He still held the revolver, although it was not pointing at anything. "Listen, if we're intruding, just say so. We'll be on our way." I must have broken him out of his reverie. "Oh, no." He stuck the revolver into his waistband and extended his hand. "I'm Toby Eason." We shook hands. "Please come join us. It's just my 2 sons and me. We were about to eat lunch. We don't have much, but you all are welcome to join in." I nonchalantly gave the signal. Julie and Macy exited the truck, walked up and introduced themselves. Toby grinned broadly as he shook their hands. The 2 boys had been peeking at us from the side of the house. Finally, curiosity got the best of them. They walked up, stood beside their father, and gawked at the 2 girls. Toby noticed and laughed. "We haven't seen any women in quite a while, especially not as beautiful as you 2. He pointed at the 2 boys. "The youngest one is Joshua, and the oldest one is Caleb." I shook hands with the 2 boys. "My name is Zachariah, which is also a name in Jewish history. These 2 are Julie and Macy." Toby glanced sidelong at me. "Are you Jewish, Zach?" he asked. I shook my head. I happened to remember Caleb and Joshua being 2 spies of Moses who urged him to trust in God and enter the land of Canaan. He looked at me oddly. "I went to school with him," Macy said. "Trust me, he's a genius." "Oh," Toby said. "Well, I'm cooking a chicken on the grill and back. Please join us." We started to follow him, but I stopped suddenly, causing Julie to bump into me. "Where are our manners?" I said. I looked at Toby. "When's the last time y'all had some watermelon?" I went to the back of the truck and hoisted a couple of big ones out. They were mostly still ripe. Toby and his boys gasped in unison. When we saw the diminutive size of the chicken, or whatever it was, we begged off. "I'll be honest, Toby," I said. "The girls fixed up a rather big breakfast. I don't think I'll be hungry again until sometime next week." Julie and Macy readily agreed. Toby saw through my lie, but went along with it. He knew there was not enough to go around. "You don't mind if we eat while we talk, do you?" he asked. "Not at all." I carried the watermelons over to a picnic table and carved out some slices. The 2 boys watched as if I were serving up manna from heaven. I handed each of them a slice, and they devoured it. Macy gave them spitting lessons. I briefly told our story to Toby, and he listened intently. He grinned when I told him the history of Macy and me. "So, let me get this straight. You 2, he pointed at Macy and me, are former sweethearts, and you 2, he pointed at Julie and me, are current sweethearts, and yet the 3 of you live under the same roof?" "Yep," Julie said with a grin. Toby laughed. He cut up the mystery bird for his boys and took a small bite for himself. "My wife and I moved here when she was pregnant with Caleb. We're both psychologists. Anyway, when things started getting bad, we boarded up the windows, nailed the door shut, and hid out in the basement. We had a lot of food stored up, but it didn't last very long." He nibbled a small piece of meat. "We'd peek out the windows in between the cracks of the wood and watch the neighborhood. It was tough watching our former neighbors and friends walking down the road with that infection ravaging their body. He frowned. Since both of us were psychologists, we thought we could handle the mental aspect of being shut up in the house, isolated from the rest of the world. We were wrong. One day, my wife took one of our cars and left while I was giving the boys a bath. She'd had enough, I guess. I haven't seen her since. How long ago was that? Macy asked. About 6 months ago, Toby said. His face briefly clouded up at the memory. Anyway, we have plenty of some stuff and very little of other stuff. Down the road is an overgrown farm the captain and his crew didn't ravage. It has plenty of corn in the fields, despite the most fervent attempts of the crows and other wildlife. He looked at us. Crow meat is not very tasty, just in case y'all were wondering. My scavenging forays have had limited success. I found some stuff, but I'm worried about my kids, so I don't go far. I don't think I'm getting them the proper nutrition. He pointed down the road. There are stray cows running around. I killed one about a month ago, but had no idea how to butcher it. I made a big mess, and the coyotes dragged most of it away during the night. The three of us exchanged glances. I nodded. Toby, we don't have a lot, but I think we can help out a little bit. And if I may say so, I'm a master butcher. Julie scoffed. You can't butcher a cow without my help, Zach Gunderson, and you know it. She threw a watermelon seed at me. I shrugged. She's got me on that one. It was after 4 when we said our goodbyes and got in the truck to leave. This might work out okay, I said. With Toby's help, we can start rounding up a lot of stray cattle. I wonder if he'd be willing to relocate closer to the farm. Well, after the way he ogled Macy and me, I'd bet he'll move tomorrow if you ask him. She turned onto Rocky Fork Road, and the evening sun hit her in the eyes at one point. She adjusted the visor, and Andy's picture fell onto her lap. She picked it up. What the hell is this? She asked. Oh, it's a picture of Andy, I said innocently. Why do you have it? Her tone was not friendly. She was now alternating between looking at the road and giving me the stink eye. She gave it to me. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I took it. It's not like I hid it in my wallet or anything. I glanced back at Macy. She was looking out of the window and acting as if there was something really interesting going on out there. Julie slapped the steering wheel. Wallet my ass, you don't even have a wallet anymore. That little tomboy has a crush on you. I frowned and scoffed. I started staring out of the window as well. Zach, look at me. I did so, but reluctantly. She was glaring at me now. Little teenage girls don't go around giving out their picture to just anyone. She's got a thing for you. I nodded as if she was telling me something I was totally unaware of. Julie slowed the truck down to a crawl. Has she done anything else? She asked. I scoffed again, but there was no use. I was had. Minimization goes hand in hand with lying. I knew better than to lie. She kissed me a couple of times, I said quietly. Julie slammed on the brakes. Oh my fucking God, Zach. Were you not going to tell me about this? I shrugged my shoulders. I didn't see the big deal. I didn't do anything with her. It sounded good in my head, but when it came out of my mouth, it sounded more like I was a two-timing weasel who had just been caught. Fuck me to hell, Julie said under her breath. She started to drive again. If you need to sow your wild oats or something, you can sleep with Macy, you know. I won't mind. Now my mouth dropped open. I hastened to glance back at Macy again. She was still fixated on something outside her window. What? No, you don't understand. Julie stopped the truck again. Explain it to me, Zach. Make me understand why you didn't tell me this from the get-go. I gesticulated with my hands, hoping it was having a positive effect. There's nobody else her age in their group she can relate with, and her crazy uncle is molesting her. She's lonely, and her self-esteem is probably in the toilet. If I told her I didn't want to kiss her or refused to accept her picture, how would she feel then? I sighed. I believed, and still believe, she'll be a good ally and source of information. But you're right. I should have told you immediately. I don't know what I was thinking, I said exasperatedly and braced myself. I would have rather faced a few dozen zombies than her wrath. Julie was staring at me quietly. It was hard to tell what she was thinking from the expression on her face. She took the photograph and looked it over. I thought she was going to tear it up, but instead, she stuck it in between the windshield and the headliner. Now, Andy's picture was prominently displayed. She looked at me again. If the little shit thinks she's going to steal you away from me, she's got another think coming. Then she punched me in the arm. Hard. I didn't protest. Guys, Macy said from the back seat. I don't mean to break up this heart-to-heart, but look outside to your right. I looked. There was a pack of wild dogs running through the neighborhood yards. They were trailing slightly behind us as if they were following us. They didn't look like normal dogs. These somehow looked different, more feral and deadlier. Stop the truck. I want to see how they react, I said. Julie slowed to a stop. Okay, wait a few. I rolled down the window and got the assault rifle ready. The dogs approached and surrounded our truck. These weren't your average neighborhood puppy dogs. They were hunting. They sniffed around a little, and then, as I watched, they started attacking the truck. One of the dogs attacked the mesh covering Macy's window, sinking his fangs in the mesh and trying to rip it out. She let out a frightened yelp. Shoot them, I urged, as I stuck my rifle out of the hole in the hardware cloth and shot the nearest dog. The girls were slow to react, but when I shot, they joined in. We killed 5 dogs before the rest of the pack ran off. As they ran off into the neighborhood, one of them stopped and looked back. I took aim and was about to shoot, but stopped. I recognized the dog. It was Mo, one of Rick's dogs he found abandoned on the side of the road a couple of years ago. Mo was my buddy. After Rick died, every time I went foraging, I took Mo with me. He was with me when I found Julie. Mo stared at me a moment longer before he disappeared behind a house. Julie saw him as well. Let's get out of here, she said quietly. Chapter 16. Fred. Fred reached Checkpoint Delta 2 days after leaving West Memphis. The outskirts of Oklahoma City were an apocalyptic nightmare. It seemed to Fred every street was blocked with wrecked vehicles, makeshift roadblocks, and rotting zombies. There were even burned-out buildings. Several had been demolished by unknown means. The rubble was scattered everywhere. Fred was convinced there may have been groups of survivors here and there as evidenced by the roadblocks, but they seemed to be gone now. He parked his VW at one of the entry gates to Tinker Air Force Base and got out. He was almost immediately approached by soldiers. Identify yourself, a young soldier challenged while brandishing an assault rifle. He could not have been much older than Zach, and as skinny as Zach used to be. He and his comrades were all armed, and the military insignia indicated they were Air Force. My name is Fred McCoy. I'm not looking for trouble. I only need a few provisions and I'll be on my way, he said. We're a little short on everything, Mr. McCoy. What specifically are you looking for? Food, water, maybe some gas. Whatever you have to spare, Fred replied. Sergeant Fandis glanced at his fellow soldiers. We can spare some water, maybe some MREs. I don't know about fuel. Fuel access is above my pay grade. I'd be most grateful to take whatever you can offer and I'll be on my way. "Where are you going?" one of the soldiers asked. "Los Angeles," Fred replied. "What? There's no way, dude. You'll never make it." "There are others who would agree with you," Fred said plainly. "Dude, you're fucking crazy," he said. "Could be," Fred said and looked around. "Are you guys the only ones around here?" "We've got about a platoon-sized unit. We had more, but we've had multiple firefights over the past year. We've lost a lot of soldiers and civilians." His face clouded over. "There were thousands of them, man," the other soldier said. His fellow soldiers nodded in agreement. All of them looked no older than teenagers. "You can only imagine. We had defensive positions set up at strategic parts of the city, but there were too many of them. And they don't die when you shoot them. Almost everyone died or got infected and turned into one of those things." The one who appeared in charge gestured around. "We are the only ones left. We were in the command bunker with General Shoemaker. It took a couple of weeks to shoot enough to regain control, but we haven't got them all." He gestured toward downtown Oklahoma City. "There are thousands more down there, man. You go through there and you're going to be eaten alive." Fred looked at his name tag. "Sergeant Fandis?" The young man nodded. "You seem awfully young to be a sergeant." "General Shoemaker gave me a battlefield promotion. Don't know what good it does, but anyway, I'm a staff sergeant." Fred looked around. "Anybody here left alive who can fly one of these planes?" he asked. Sergeant Fandis frowned. "Yeah, Major Fawkes." "She's a grade A bitch," the other soldier added, and his comrades quickly voiced their agreement. Sergeant Fandis pointed. "She lives in an apartment over in the officers' quarters. Are you sure you want to talk to her?" he asked. Fred nodded. Sergeant Fandis sighed. "I was afraid of that." Chapter 17. The Loss of Mo. It was the time of morning just before dawn, which I'd grown to love. The sky was still dark, but getting lighter. It was called BMNT in military terms, before morning nautical time. There was enough of a hint of light in the room that I could see Julie's face as she slept. The mixture of light and shadows only enhanced her beauty. I thought about what she had said yesterday in the truck on the way home. I had mixed emotions. There was no way I was going to risk losing her, but I was concerned she was going to tell me to have no further contact with Andy, even though this was probably the best course of action. I slid out of bed, put some jeans and a t-shirt on, and got a pot of coffee started. I was startled briefly when I felt something nudging my calf. Turning, I was greeted by Curly looking at me sleepily and wagging his tail. "I bet someone needs to go outside," I whispered as I petted him. His tail thumped the floor in agreement. I shut the door quietly behind us and waited on the porch while Curly sniffed around in the yard, looking for an appropriate spot. Suddenly, the hair stood up on his back. He ran back up on the porch and let out a soft whimper. "What is it, boy?" I asked as I pulled my handgun out of my waistband. I peered intently into the morning fog. Was it a zombie? I sniffed the morning air, trying to see if I could catch a whiff of distinctive odors. Then I saw it. A coyote. Only it wasn't a coyote. It was Mo. He was leaner now. His once well-brushed coat was dirty and matted. There were fresh scars on his face. I whistled softly. "Here, Mo. Come here, buddy." I tried to coax him, but he only responded with a soft growl. He gave me the look he gave me yesterday, and then disappeared into the morning fog. I got some dog food and waited for 30 minutes, but he never reappeared. Curly sat close and leaned against me for comfort. I could feel him shaking. He was scared of his brother for some reason. It was a sad moment. Curly and I went back inside. Zach, Julie called out. Down here. I'll be up in a sec, I said. After the encounter with Mo, I started in on the first task for the day, which began in the cellar. It took me another 10 minutes before I was finished. I went upstairs to the kitchen and added the wares in the cabinets to my list while the girls prepared breakfast. Next time you go foraging, you better find yourself some more notepads, Julie said. Macy giggled. What are you doing anyway? Updating our food inventory, I said, and sat down at the kitchen table. Julie sat a fresh steaming mug of coffee down in front of me. I nodded gratefully. Why? She asked. I wanted to get confirmation of what I suspected. They looked at me, waiting for me to explain. We're running out of food, I said. The two of them looked at me in confusion, and I explained. If it were only the three of us, we'd be fine. Especially with the gardens, the rabbits and chickens, cows, etc. But we've been contributing food to the Allen family and are about to start feeding the Eason family. 10 people total. Bottom line, we can't do it. We'll run out of our canned goods before spring, I finished. Julie gasped. We discussed the dilemma as we ate breakfast. All right, I think we have to agree at this point. We can't continue giving away food. At least, not right now. I stood and stretched. I'm terribly behind on my chores, so I'll be busy with them most of the day. What are you two going to do? I'm going to ride Prancer, so I thought I'd ride the fence lines and go check on Fred's house, Julie said. I'll clean up the house, Macy said. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. Why don't you get outside? You can work in the gardens. The sunshine will do you some good, I suggested. Yeah, girl, you definitely need some sun, Julie added. I can teach you how to ride Prancer if you like. I think I'll stick with the gardening for now, Macy said quietly. Julie and I looked at each other but did not say anything. I got up and kissed Julie. She stood and hugged me. Give Macy a kiss. She needs it, she whispered in my ear. I looked at her questioningly. She motioned with her head. As I walked out, I gave Macy a quick kiss on the top of her head. It came to me as I finished planting a crop of winter wheat. It was a viable plan, but I needed to meet with the captain. My watch read 11. Perfect. I was going to eat a quick lunch, and then I'd call the captain on the radio at noon. I parked the tractor beside the barn and headed toward the house. Macy was sitting on the porch reading a book. She had shorts on and was sunning her freshly shaven legs. She smiled as I walked up. How are you feeling? I asked. Pretty good, actually. I fed the chickens and rabbits. We had 7 eggs, and I've tended the plants in the greenhouse. I think we'll be able to harvest the basil and mint leaves any day now, she said, and sighed. I'm worn out. I'm getting my strength back, but I'm definitely not 100% yet. I nodded. It'll come back to you. I sat in the rocking chair beside her. Nice weather today, I commented. Macy nodded. Yeah, I wonder what kind of winter we're going to have. It's hard to say. If I were to speculate, I'd guess it'll be colder than usual. Mankind's carbon footprint has been significantly reduced, so there should be a noticeable difference. Zach, what do you think you would have done for a career if all of this had not happened? She asked. I shrugged. I don't know. My options were limited. I would have liked to have gone to college to be an engineer. What about you? I wanted to be a nurse, she said, and closed the book. You know something, Zach? This apocalypse thing was probably the best thing to ever happen to you. I arched my eyebrows. She chuckled. You've thrived, Zach. Most people, the ones who have survived, are having a hard time. I guess a good example would be Jason and his friends. They were on top of the world before, but after, we were hungry most of the time and miserable. She shook her head. I was stupid, wasn't I? Adversity does not build character, it reveals it, I replied and grinned at her. I saw that quote on one of those inspirational posters once. Julie and I are two very lucky girls to have a man like you around, she said, smiling. And I'm betting that brain of yours is figuring out a way to sustain 10 or more people through the winter. I smiled. In fact, I am. I think I have an idea, but it's going to require meeting up with the captain and getting him on board. I thought for a minute. What do you think is lacking around here? She thought for a minute. It would be nice to have friendly neighbors, like the Allens, for example. I think we need to talk them into moving into one of the vacant houses nearby. She tilted her head. I miss the little things we once took for granted. Cheese, desserts, oh, and let's not forget an occasional glass of wine. I chuckled. I believe we've discovered what will be your new responsibility, I said. The grapevines we have didn't produce this year. Perhaps they need some TLC from a pretty blonde girl. She smiled. I held up a finger as an idea came to me. It seems like all of the liquor stores have been looted, but I'm betting if we go salvaging in some of the rich neighborhoods, we'll find a wine cellar or two. That would be so cool, she said. She then reached over, grabbed my hand, and we shared a quiet moment together. Have you seen Julie lately? I asked. She hasn't come back yet. Oh, I guess she's having a good time. I looked at my watch. Hey, it's right at noon. Let's see if we can make contact with Fred. We walked inside, and Macy sat in front of the ham radio. She made several attempts, but there was no response from Fred, only static. Macy looked at me with worry. Do you think he's dead? She asked. I don't know. He's a tough man, but I don't know. Okay, move over. I'm gonna try calling the captain. She changed the radio frequency and we swapped seats. You don't want me talking to them? Macy asked. Hell no. Neither you nor Julie, I said. I tried calling several times before I received a response. Hi, Zach. Andy's voice came through the radio, loud and clear. Macy goosed me. She certainly sounds happy to hear your voice, she whispered. I goosed her back and she let out a yelp. Hello, Andy. Would you ask the captain if he would be receptive to a friendly meeting? I have some ideas I want to talk to him about. Okay, stand by, she said. After a minute, the captain's voice came over the radio. Hello, Zach. It's been a while, he said. Yes, sir. I've been extremely busy. I'm sure you have as well. Indeed I have. What's on your mind? He asked. I'd like to meet with you. I have a few ideas I've been mulling over, and I'd like to discuss them with you. I think they could be beneficial for both of us. There was a long minute of silence. Okay, Zach, he finally replied. We worked out the details and signed off. That wasn't so hard, was it? Macy asked. You never know with him. It may be a friendly meeting, or he may be planning on killing me as soon as he sees me. I stood. I'm going to grab a snack and get back to the chores. I was only in the kitchen 10 minutes before I was back at it. I worked the rest of the afternoon lost in my thoughts. Macy walked up while I was weeding the garden. Zach, Julie hasn't shown up yet. I think something may be wrong. Damn, I had been so absorbed in my own thoughts I had forgotten about her. I looked at my watch. Shit, you're right. Go grab a rifle and meet me in the barn. She hurried inside. I got our ATV started. Macy came in a moment later carrying an AR-15. Great, thanks. You might want to wait inside, just in case, I said. Macy shook her head. I want to go with you. Without waiting for me to respond, she jumped on. I hit the throttle. She instinctively grabbed me around the torso and held on. We found Julie at the far end of the farm, sitting under a tree. Prancer was nearby, grazing contentedly. The saddle had flipped and was hanging under her belly. "My ankle is fucked," Julie lamented. I could see she had been crying. We got off of the ATV and hurried over to her. "What happened?" Macy asked. Julie sighed. "A snake spooked Prancer. She reared back and the saddle came loose. I came flying off and my boot stuck in the stirrup. I don't know if it's broken or not." I looked her over. I saw no injuries other than the swollen ankle and her scuffed hands. "Okay, let's get you loaded up on the ATV and Macy will drive you back. I'll take care of Prancer." Julie agreed and we carefully loaded her up on the ATV. I watched the two of them ride away and turned my attention to Prancer. "All right, girl, if you're nice, I'll give you a couple of carrots when we get back." I guess she understood because she calmly let me fix the saddle and took off at a gallop when I mounted her. We were at the barn within minutes. I walked her to cool her down and then gave her a good brushing before going inside. Oh, and she got a couple of carrots, along with a bucket of water. I found Julie sitting up in the bed reading a book. She had stripped down to a t-shirt and underwear, and her foot was propped up by a pillow. "How's it feeling?" I asked. "It's better now. The swelling seems to have gone down," she said. I looked at it and poked it gently in various places. Julie didn't scream out in pain, which I took as a good sign, but she winced a little and glared at me. "Yeah, I think you're right. Hopefully it's only a bad sprain." I kissed her ankle before stripping and getting in bed beside her. "There you go. It's gonna be all better now," I said with a grin. Julie chuckled. "Your kisses go a long way." "I certainly hope so," I said. "You didn't notice it, but when you kissed Macy earlier today, she actually blushed." I frowned. "Why did she blush?" Julie slapped me playfully on the chest. "Jesus, Zach, for a man who is like a fucking genius, you know nothing about women." I sighed. "You keep saying that. So edify me, please." "You don't get it. Women need attention. They need to feel loved. Macy hasn't had anything even close to love in a long time." She scoffed. "You're probably the last person to actually show her any genuine love back when the two of you were dating. All you have to do is give her a hug occasionally, maybe a kiss, tell her how pretty she is, and you've made her day." "But why me?" I asked. "Because, dumbass, you're the only man around." She paused a moment and her tone changed. "Have you thought about sleeping with her?" she asked tentatively. I carefully rolled over in the bed and looked at her. "With Macy?" I asked. I watched her as she nodded her head. I suddenly found myself with several spots on my body in need of scratching. "No, not really," I said. Julie wrinkled her brow at me. "I mean, I guess I've thought about when we were together that one time, but I'm not going to do anything to betray you. I love you too much." She smiled at me. "I love you too, Zach. I know you won't betray me." She kissed me and buried her head in her pillow. Then she surprised me. "You'd be surprised to know Macy loves you as well." Chapter 18. Dentistry 101. We decided on the location where we had first met. The same spot where Fred and I were forced to abandon the tanker. The first meeting, he was waiting on me. On this occasion, I was waiting on him. Although it appeared I was alone, in fact, I had company. The night before, I prepared a sniper pit very close to the same spot where Fred watched over me during the first meeting. It was near some trees in between two houses with overgrown lawns. I dug a hole in the ground large enough for a 110-pound girl to lay prostrate in. Macy was dressed in camouflage clothing, complete with strips of burlap rags tied here and there. I had her flaxen blonde hair tucked into a boonie hat and her face camouflaged with a combination of earth colors. I also insisted she wear a diaper. Julie would have naturally been my first choice for this endeavor, but her ankle was still too tender to walk on. Macy quickly volunteered when I had talked about it. "All right, you have a canteen of water and some energy bars. They're only a few months past their expiration date, but they're still edible. Howard is going to drive up at noon tomorrow. He's going to park right down the road at the burned-out house. His instructions are that you'll walk out to meet him at noon, but he's going to wait at least 4 hours. Do you think you can handle it?" I asked. "I think so, but I have some questions," Macy said. "Ask away." "Okay, let's see. Why are we here 6 hours before you're meeting him? Why do I have to walk so far to meet up with Howard when I leave? Why am I supposed to keep my walkie-talkie turned off unless there is an emergency? Oh, and let's not forget, why in the world did you insist I wear a diaper?" "Those are good questions," I replied. "First, we're here early so nobody sees us put you here. Second, you don't want Howard parked close to you. To do so may increase the risk of giving away your position if the captain has scouts deployed. We don't have headsets for these walkie-talkies, and there's something about the radio sound which carries a long way, especially at night. We don't want that." I inhaled. "Now, as for the diaper, at some point you're going to have to go to the restroom. You are not to get out of your hole and go do your business, because if you do, you run the risk of giving away your location. You may not know this, but professional military snipers just go in their pants. They're men, after all. A diaper is better." I let it sink in for a moment before continuing. "When it's time for you to leave and go to Howard, it won't be a casual stroll. You need to be quiet and sneak your way to him. Oh, and one other thing. If you encounter zombies, make sure they're actually onto you and not simply walking on by. If your life is in danger, start shooting. I'll come." I looked at her in the darkness. "Anything else?" I asked. She shook her head and sighed. "I can't think of anything," she said. I reached out and grabbed her by the shoulders. "I'm putting my life in your hands. You're a great shot. If I didn't think you could do it, I'd have left you at home," I said. Macy nodded. I was trying to think of anything I'd forgotten and remembered what Julie told me last night. "You look really cute in camouflage," I said playfully, then leaned forward and kissed her on the cheek. The truth was, I could hardly see her in the dark. "I'll do the best I can, Zach." There was apprehension in her voice. I nodded. "In you go," I said. She crawled into the spider hole and lay prostrate. I covered her with tree limbs and other debris. I parked at the meeting spot and tried to grab a couple of hours of sleep, but the stress of the impending meeting prevented it. Instead, I sat there in the dark, thinking about our lives, and found myself thinking of Macy lying out there in a hole by herself. I admitted to myself I was growing fond of her, and was a little worried about leaving her out there alone. The sunrise caused the dew to extract itself out of the ground in a morning mist. It was going to be a nice day. I hope Macy was not too chilled. The captain was very punctual and drove up promptly at 6. And he was alone, or so it appeared. I stood as he got out of his truck. He was carrying some type of pouch in one hand and a folding chair in the other. "Good morning, Zach. How are you?" He greeted me in his baritone voice. "I'm doing well, Captain. How about yourself?" We shook hands. He unfolded the chair and sat down. "Quite frankly, Zach, I am not doing well, and I believe I need your help." I looked at him questioningly. "I have a toothache. I want you to have a look at it." He opened the pouch. It looked like a dentist's kit. "Would you do me the honor, good sir?" "You want me to look at the tooth in your mouth?" I asked, with no small amount of trepidation. He nodded. "Okay. Hang on a second." I went to my truck and retrieved some waterless disinfectant along with a mini flashlight. The captain watched as I squirted the gel on my hands and rubbed it in. "You see," he said, "I knew you were the correct person to entrust in this. I don't think any of my crew would have thought of disinfecting their hands." "Yeah, well, they've not been trained properly then." I turned on the flashlight. "All right, lean your head back and open wide." The captain obeyed. "Which tooth is it?" I asked. He pointed at the back on his right side. I used one of those little mirrors first. I saw a distinct dark spot in the middle of a molar and used a probe to poke it. The captain jerked and grunted. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a cavity. Judging from the swollen state of the gums around it, I'd say it's infected too," I declared. "What do you recommend?" the captain asked when I pulled my hand out of his mouth. I sat back down. "Well, sir, a dentist would inject your gum with Novocaine. Then he or she would drill out the cavity and fill it with silver amalgam." "And if there is no dentist available?" he asked. "From what I've read, back in the old days, they'd take a pair of pliers and pull the tooth out. Of course, the patient would be drunk or would have ingested a healthy dose of laudanum beforehand." The captain frowned and nodded. "I see. Let's defer the topic of my tooth for now. Tell me what your ideas are." I enumerated with my fingers. Crop production, cattle production, trade. The captain looked me over. "Explain." "First, there's a lot of land here in this area which is not being farmed. We, and I use we in the vernacular, need to farm this land and sow crops. The overage can be distributed, bartered, or stored in silos. I believe in the long run this will help abate any possible food shortages. I don't know about you and your group, but my group is going to be hard-pressed this winter." I took a breath and casually looked around. "Second, there are stray cattle roaming all around. They need to be rounded up and tended to before they're killed off by coyotes in these feral dog packs I've been seeing. This is a very good source of food and trade, which leads to the third idea I have. I think we should set up a trading post. We're inevitably going to have a good harvest of some crops and a shortage of other crops. You may have an abundance of cattle, and I may have an abundance of vegetables. This is where a neutral trading post will be beneficial. You and I both know there are other survivors out there. A central meeting place will establish networks with these people." I sat down in my chair. "I have a comprehensive plan all written out if you'd like to see it," I said. The captain looked at me somberly. He was wearing a tight-fitting olive-drab t-shirt today. His muscles bulged underneath. "Zach, I have been thinking exactly along the very same lines." I doubted it, but nodded in agreement anyway. "Much like a Greek agora, perhaps?" he asked. "Yes, sir, exactly. A trading hub is much more than just a trading hub, as you well know. When people get together, they talk, and when they talk, they give out information. A trading hub is considered a cornerstone in a basic society. At the moment, we're nothing more than a couple of small bands. We need to expand and grow." "Did you have a location in mind?" I shrugged. "There are several possibilities. We want a trading hub close to our respective homes, but accessible to others. I say we go with a pre-existing building, maybe a truck stop. A large parking lot would be beneficial. People would come and camp out. We'll need to harden the building, of course." "Yes, I see where you're going with this. It would be a community gathering place, so you'll need plenty of room," he said. I nodded. "We start with something small and build from there. We can do it, Captain, if we work together." The captain nodded while holding his jaw. It was obvious he was in pain. "Zach, I have this scenario in my head where you and I spend many an evening around the fire, enjoying a fine glass of cognac and having many interesting philosophical discussions." He leaned forward and lowered his voice. "The people in my group, they're fine people, hard workers, but dumber than rocks. He leaned back. "When I was a younger man, I worked part-time at a convalescent home. It was shitty work for the most part, but there was this one highly decorated World War II veteran. He was a most interesting man. The stories he had." The captain stared off into space wistfully. "So, you and I are about to embark on a great journey in which we rebuild society. In the meantime, what do you recommend I do about my tooth?" I shrugged. "Take someone you trust, Andy perhaps. Go to a dentist's office and use the equipment to fix it." I pointed at my own mouth. "There's a risk factor, of course. If it were easy, dentists wouldn't have to go through so much schooling." "Zach, there's nobody else. What should I do?" he asked. I shrugged again. "There's no dentist anywhere around as far as we know. I'll take my Leatherman tool and pull it out if you want. The extent of my experience is a video I once saw on the internet. I imagine it will be very painful." He looked at me. "Do it." The captain grunted a few times, but never once cried out in pain. It was impressive. I worked the tooth with my pliers for several minutes before it dislodged. After I extracted it, I packed the hole in his gum with neosporin and gauze. He looked at my work with a small mirror, inspected the rotten tooth, and nodded in gratitude. We said our goodbyes and drove away at the same time. I drove a short distance, stopped, turned my radio on, and waited. Howard called me approximately 40 minutes later. I answered immediately. "Do you have Macy?" He answered in the affirmative. I was relieved she was okay and headed home. They were waiting for me when I arrived. "What in the world were you doing to him?" Macy asked. Howard and Julie looked at Macy questioningly. "I'm watching them through the rifle scope, and before I know it, Zach is bent over him and has a pair of pliers in the captain's mouth. It was weird looking." "I have discovered a skill I didn't know I had," I said, smiling, and explained what I did. They looked at me incredulously. "And he didn't scream out in pain or anything?" Howard asked. I shook my head. "Damn," he said in amazement, and then looked at his watch. "You guys need me for anything else? I'd kind of like to get going." I extended my hand, and we shook. "Howard, you've been more than helpful. Tell LaShonda and the boys hello for us. Oh, I think Julie has a care package made up for you." Julie limped as she walked into the kitchen and returned with an assortment of vegetables and herbs fresh from the greenhouse. We stood on the porch and waved as Howard drove off. "Zach, I think you owe me a hot bath," Macy asserted. I readily agreed. Chapter 19. Fred. Fred saw her as they walked down the road. She was in front of her apartment on the sidewalk performing an endless series of calisthenics. Fred also noted she was clad only in nylon shorts, running shoes, and an athletic bra. "That's Major Fawkes," Sergeant Fandis said softly. "She'll probably cuss us or something. She doesn't seem to like anyone." "I can hear you, Sergeant," she said as she finished 50 push-ups and stood. Sergeant Fandis saluted when she stood, which she ignored. She was lean and muscular. Fred could not help but notice her taut and defined abs. Her hair was cut short and tied back in a very small ponytail. Her features were sharp. She'd never win any beauty contests, but still, Fred thought of her as attractive. If she let her hair grow out and perhaps some makeup, he saw possibilities. He could not tell how old she was. She could have been anywhere from early 30s to late 40s. "What are you gawking at, cowboy?" she asked roughly. Fred took off his hat. "I apologize, ma'am. Sergeant Fandis here says you are a major. I guess I was expecting you to be all spit and polish, and in uniform." She stared at Fred coolly. "Who the hell is this man, Sergeant Fandis, and why did you bring him to me? Are you trying to play matchmaker or something?" "Oh, no, ma'am. I'd never do such a thing, trust me," Sergeant Fandis said, to which she responded with a harsh glare. I've got somewhere I have to be, Fred. I'll come back and get you in a few. He quickly saluted and ran off before Major Fawkes could say anything. All right, start with your name, she ordered. Fred McCoy. Where are you from, Fred, and why are you here bothering me? She asked as she wiped the sweat off of her face. I'm recently from Tennessee. I'm trying to find my daughter. The young sergeant said you're the only pilot left. I want to know if it would be possible for you to fly me to Los Angeles. Major Fawkes looked at Fred with incredulity and chortled. You got some balls, cowboy, she finished, wiping the sweat off, tossed the towel to Fred, and walked inside. Fred followed after a moment and walked in as she put a t-shirt on. The apartment was Spartan in appearance and furnishings. It looked more like a college dorm room to Fred, without any posters or photographs. There were 2 beds with desks and wall lockers on the end. There was 1 bathroom with a sink, toilet, and shower. It did not appear there was any electricity or running water. What's your daughter doing in California? She asked. Fred calmly explained while wondering what to do with the towel. So let me get this straight, the Major said as she started mixing a protein drink with water from a canteen. Your darling little girl thought she wanted to be the next superstar actress, headed out to Los Angeles, and you've not heard from her since the world went to hell. Fred nodded. That's been over 18 months ago, cowboy. She's dead or a zombie by now. You know that, right? Do you have any children, Major? Fred asked quietly. She arched an eyebrow and scowled. Betsy is my only child, he continued. She's the only family I have left. For the past year, I've been asking myself, what kind of a father am I to not go find her? It's something I've got to try. Los Angeles is a big town, cowboy. Do you even know where to look? All I have is the address of her apartment. You're fucking crazy, you know that, she asked rhetorically. Fred draped the towel across the back of a folding chair beside the door. Probably. Would you be willing to fly me out there? You don't have to stay. I can find my way back. Major Fawkes finished her drink and set it down. Fred, you're totally wrong on this one. Am I? What would your father do? Fred countered. Leave my fucking father out of this, she suddenly shouted. Fred looked at the floor and slowly put his cowboy hat back on. I apologize for troubling you. I'll find my way back to the sergeant. Fred walked out and was half a block away when he heard someone running up from behind. He stopped and waited for her. You're going to try to drive all the way there, aren't you? She phrased it as a statement rather than a question. Yep, Fred responded, and then added, I've made it 1,000 miles already, so I only have 1,000 more to go. Unless you know of another pilot around here I could talk to, it looks like I'm going to have to drive. She sighed and shook her head. Let's go talk to General Shoemaker. Chapter 20. Winter. Winter is supposed to officially begin on the 21st of December, the day when the sun is furthest from the planet. Someone didn't get the memo. On the morning of the 10th, the rain began. As the sun set, it turned into an ice storm. It lasted most of the night. We awoke the next morning to everything coated in a thick layer of ice. I've seen beautiful paintings and pictures of a frozen landscape with glistening icicles hanging from tree limbs and waterways covered in a shiny sheet of ice. In reality, ice can destroy trees as easily as fire, lightning, or pestilence. It sure did a number on our radio antenna. We had a few sunny days after, but it was a two-edged sword. The ice would melt a little bit and then refreeze at night. On the 14th, it snowed. Beautiful, heavy snowflakes, almost 8 inches worth. Not a great deal in the northern states, but quite a lot in Tennessee. The three of us gazed out of the window, looking at the snow-covered fields. We're most definitely snowbound, Julie said. I nodded. I wonder how everyone else is doing. I hope they're okay, Macy replied. Yeah, me too. I'm curious how the zombies who are outside are faring. I bet they're frozen solid, I speculated and retrieved a notepad. We should try to go see Bernie and the Allens, Macy suggested. I shook my head. When I tried to get out yesterday, there were several trees across the roads, and there's a thick coat of ice under the snow. I looked at the girls. It's too risky to travel right now. We're stuck here. Macy groaned. Cabin fever, here we come. She was right. The first few days, we spent all day rounding up the cattle and their newborn. As usual, the change in barometric pressure caused a lot of births. There were 8 calves altogether. Julie made an offhanded comment about the only male getting around more than me was our bull. Other than tending to our livestock in the greenhouse, we passed our off time by having contests of disassembling weapons and putting them back together. I had the 3 of us practice house clearing drills until they begged me to stop. When the sun went down, we either played cards or read to each other by lamplight. By the beginning of the second week, we were getting quite bored and irritable. We had built as many snowmen as we cared to, and the snowball fights were getting old. We discussed our options one evening after we had finished dinner. We've had a couple of sunny days. Maybe the snow is melting and we can go for a ride, Macy speculated. What do you think, Zach? The temperature has stayed at or below freezing, so the roads probably haven't thawed out very much. We're stuck here a few more days, I'd say. Maybe tomorrow, after we feed the animals, we can try to fix the radio antenna or even get out and saw up some of the fallen trees. The first day it's decent, we'll try to go visit. Julie sighed. So what do we do in the meantime? She asked nobody in particular. Macy raised her hand. I know. She jumped up and went to the cupboard. Julie and I looked at each other questioningly. She closed the door and turned around with a bottle of whiskey. Where did you find that? I asked, pointing at the bottle. It was hidden behind some junk on a shelf in the barn, she replied with a grin. I laughed. Rick probably had bottles of whiskey hidden in all kinds of places. Oh, I've got one more thing. She opened another cabinet and retrieved a package of stale Twinkies. She took one out and put a small, well-used candle in the center of it. So, what is the occasion? I asked as she lit it. Macy looked at me as if I already knew. We've totally forgotten your birthday. Julie gasped and looked at me. I shrugged. When was your birthday, Zach? Last month, I said. I turned 17 in November. I shrugged again. It's no big deal. I leaned forward and blew out my candle. Oh my God, she exclaimed. I had totally forgotten. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too, Zach, Macy said. Please forgive us. I held my hands out. All is forgiven if you give me one of those Twinkies. Besides, we have something more to celebrate. They again looked at me curiously. I took the bottle of whiskey, Jack Daniel's Black Label, and poured a shot into 3 glasses. At my cue, the 3 of us held up our glasses. Here's to Christmas Eve. Both of them opened their mouths in a silent O. I chuckled and took a sip of my drink. They followed. Holy shit, I've totally lost track of the days, Julie said and sipped some more. Me too, Macy said. She downed her whiskey and choked. This shit is strong, she coughed out. We laughed at her as I stood up. Okay, before it gets too dark out, I have something in the barn I need to get. I'll be right back. Julie started to say something. I held up a finger. It's a surprise. I walked back in a minute later carrying a large cardboard box. I set it down and took off my jacket. What's in the box? Julie asked. I smiled. Why, it's filled with Christmas presents. The two of them gasped in unison. I set it down, away from their prying eyes. I believe I'll have another taste of whiskey. I held up my glass expectantly. Macy quickly poured, and I smiled appreciatively. Why don't you two sit on the couch? I'll get some wood on the fire, and we'll get started. They sat down, and Julie lit a couple of candles. I dragged the old wing-back chair close to the coffee table. They sat down, and Julie lit a couple of candles. I dragged the old wing-back chair close to the coffee table. Okay, the first presents are... I reached into the box. Sports bras and socks. I smiled as their faces lit up and reached for them. I'm pretty sure I've gotten the correct sizes. Oops, uh-oh. We've forgotten a tradition. Every time you get a present, you have to take a sip. They readily obeyed. Macy did not cough this time. Okay, second present, and on it went. I had stocked up on several female items when Howard and I cleared the Walmart of its stinking guardians. They oohed and awed every time I pulled something out, whether it was a bottle of shampoo, bras and panties, or a box of tampons. By the time I was down to the last of the presents, the girls were giggling drunk. I was pretty lubricated as well. And now, for the semi-grand finale, I announced, and pulled out 2 pairs of pajamas, the kind with footies and drawings of cartoon characters on them. Oh, these are awesome, Macy exclaimed as she held them up. Julie giggled. What, you didn't get us any makeup? Julie asked, after taking another sip of whiskey. I'm joking. Thank you for all of the presents, sweetheart, she said, and blew me a kiss. I smiled pleasantly. There's no need for makeup anymore. Julie started to protest, but I held my hand up. However, never let it be said I'm not learning a little bit about women. I reached into the box and pulled out a small travel makeup case. They smiled appreciatively. And one more final present for you two. I imagine you'd want to wait until it's a little bit warmer before wearing these. I pulled out 2 black nighties. Now, bear in mind, they're from Walmart and not Victoria's Secret, I said. The two of them gasped. Julie got up and grabbed me in a hug. Macy followed suit. Julie then grabbed the makeup case and some of the other items. Okay, big boy, you stay in here, Julie ordered. Macy and I are going to fix ourselves up. Macy smiled and followed Julie into the bedroom, but not before grabbing the nighties and grinning at me. I put another log on the fire before sitting back and enjoying some more Jack Daniels. It had a pleasant burning sensation as it went down my throat. I heard them talking and giggling as I pulled my boots off and placed them beside the door. They came out 20 minutes later. Both of them had their faces made up, and they were wearing the black nighties, the new panties, and nothing else. I had to admit they looked very seductive and hoped my ogling was not obvious. They giggled as they sat down on the couch across from me. Do you like? Julie asked. I must admit I did. Very much. I stammered out a yes. Macy refilled our glasses. Let's do something. She looked at us mischievously. How about a drinking game? Julie bounced up and down in agreement, which caused her breasts to jiggle under the nightie. Okay, but I can't drink anymore. I'm pregnant, remember? She burst out laughing at her own joke. I know, she said. We can play truth or dare. Macy readily agreed. You first, Zach. Truth or dare? Julie challenged. And so it started. The 3 of us, snowed in, each suffering from cabin fever, a bottle of alcohol, a crackling fire, soft candlelight, 2 gorgeous teenage girls sitting there wearing nothing but nighties and a smile. The rest was entirely predictable. I was the first one to wake up the next morning. The three of us were an entanglement of arms, legs, nighties, and blankets. My bladder was begging in protest, and my head was throbbing. I took care of the bladder first, swallowed some aspirin, and found some of my clothes in the den. Managing to get them on, I went outside and turned the generator on. I sat quietly in the den until I felt the water was hot enough, and then snuck into the shower. I didn't regret what had happened. Hell, from what I could remember, I had the time of my life. Still, for some reason, I felt guilty. As I let the spray work on my pounding head, I sensed someone getting in the shower behind me, followed by a pair of hands rubbing my back. I turned around and faced Julie. She let the spray hit her in the face, got a mouth full of water, and spit it on my chest. "I've got a bad case of cock breath," she said. I couldn't help but laugh, which was not conducive to helping my headache. Julie laughed too, and then groaned. "Oh, I've forgotten how bad a hangover feels. We should give up alcohol and only smoke weed when we want to party." She took the soap out of my hand and began lathering me up. When she was finished, she gave the soap back to me. "My turn," she said. I returned the favor. "Did you have a good time last night?" she asked. I must admit I did. What I can remember of it anyway. I looked at her. "So why do I feel guilty?" Julie scoffed as she rinsed off. "Because deep down you're still an old-fashioned guy." She turned around, pulled my head down, and kissed me. "Let me help you ease your troubled mind. We're together now, the three of us. One day it may change. In the meantime, you've got us and we have you." I leaned my head down to Julie's ear. "But I love you. I don't love Macy." Julie scoffed. "You could have fooled me the way you were last night." She grinned at me and nudged me out of the shower. "I'm going to wash my hair. Wake Macy up and tell her to get in here." Chapter 21. Fred. Fred and Major Fawkes were escorted into the general's office by a slender black man wearing thick horn-rimmed glasses. He bore the rank of a senior master sergeant. Major Fawkes stopped in front of a desk occupied by an older bald man looking out of his window. She came to attention and rendered a salute. "Sir," she said, all the while holding the salute. The general did not turn. "At ease, Major," he said, before swiveling in his chair and facing them. General Shoemaker was in his late 50s, with clear blue eyes augmented by wire-framed glasses. With the exception of the hair growing out of his ears, he was clean-shaven, including his head. He stood briefly and shook Fred's hand before returning to his seat. "Welcome to Tinker. I'm General Thomas Shoemaker," he said. Fred shook his outstretched hand. "Fred McCoy, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Are you a citizen of Oklahoma City?" the general asked. "No, sir. I'm from Tennessee." The general widened his eyes in surprise. "Oh, all the way from Tennessee, you say? What brings you out here?" Before Fred explained, Major Fawkes jumped in. "He's on his way to Los Angeles to try to find his daughter. He wants me to fly him." General Shoemaker eyed them both before responding. "Tell me, Mr. McCoy, how is Tennessee?" "About the same as it is here. There are a lot of dead people, a lot of those infected people wandering around, and a few survivors. There was a National Guard barracks in South Nashville, but they had a mutiny of some sort. Some of the soldiers were killed as a result, and a lot of them were killed fighting the zombies." "Ah, yes, zombies. Seems to be a popular term to describe them." He turned and pointed out of the window. "At one time, Tinker was home to the 72nd Air Base Wing. The number of our personnel was well over 10,000. Now, All that is left is 22 people, 5 of whom are civilians. He swiveled and looked back out of his window. There was a mass infection of our personnel. Several people died in an attempt to contain them. Then we sadly realized it was better to kill them, which we did. But there were too many. Hordes of them would come on post. They never slept, and there were no discernible tactics. They simply came. He turned back around and faced us. We realized later, of course, they were attracted to the lights and the noise of the aircraft, so I ordered them grounded. We also lost a lot of lives before we realized shooting them center mass was a wasted effort. He leaned forward. You have to kill the brain. That is what is infected. The brain. Yes, sir, we learned that as well, Fred said. General Shoemaker leaned back in his chair and studied Fred. The very first thought I had when Major Fawkes said you wanted a plane ride was the cost of the fuel. Aviation fuel was very expensive, and I was responsible for the operating costs of the base. He rocked in his chair with his hands forming a steeple in front of his face. Finally, he looked over at the Major. What do you think, Major Fawkes? He asked. The odds are pretty good his daughter is dead, or worse. But we've not conducted any aerial reconnaissance since you grounded me, sir, she said. You're itching to get some flying in, the General commented. We have a C-130 set up with video surveillance equipment. It has an auxiliary fuel tank in the cargo hold, so we'll have enough range. Also, the GPS satellites are still online. We might gather some good intel. She glanced over at Fred. Besides, the fuel is going to go bad eventually. We may as well use it while we can, sir. General Shoemaker swiveled in his chair and resumed staring out the window. File a flight plan with the Master Sergeant. Give me a briefing when you return, Major. Dismissed.